arrived to Ireland in 2002. So what brought me to Ireland? Probably many Irish people asking me this question, and my answer is now is Celtic Tiger. At that time, economic in Ireland was quite in the good level and boom, and it was many working places available, and it was possible to come legally and to work. And so I applied through the agency, and I arrived to Ireland to pick up mushrooms. And 4 months later, I changed the job, and I was in nursing home. But because I'm a doctor, I started to look for the possibilities to work as a doctor, and I found out that I can do the exams, registration exams. So I started to study, to prepare. I've done my registration, and I started to work as a doctor here in Ireland. Why I left Ukraine? Because in 2002 it was quite a poor economical situation in Ireland, and even working as a doctor in Ukraine, I couldn't afford anything. My children were growing up and they were going to college, and I couldn't afford to pay even the educational fees, and I wanted to give a good education to my children. That's why I decided to go.
I decided to move from Ukraine because there were many reasons. First, of course, I was curious how is it outside of Ukraine, but the main reason was that the country was very corrupted. And corrupted in terms of nearly everything: education, medicine, police. Everything was corrupted. Judges, all that. And this was the main reason why I decided to move out from Ukraine. So I decided to move to Ireland because I started to look for a job outside of Ukraine, and they were the Irish company. They invited me, and I passed all the interviews. So this was the reason why I moved to Ireland, and why I was chosen from different countries, and the countries that I was chosen from were English speaking mainly. So there wasn't much. There was England, US, Ireland, maybe Australia. And the Irish company was the first that invited me, and I didn't have to pass any tests like English knowledge or something like that, or history or whatever. So it was the easiest way for me. So I moved to Ireland in 2012. If I want to talk about a little bit more about the corruption in Ukraine, because this is the main reason why the revolution happened in Ukraine, because people were sick of it, and in Ukraine, basically, the reason why this is all so unfair is that the people with money, they can do in Ukraine anything they want. They can disobey the law. They can do literally anything they want as long as they can pay for it. And this is the main reason why the revolution started, because people were just sick of it. So we were, before the revolution, Ukraine was moving towards the European values. This is what they claim to be. And the reason why it started is that they said that, okay, that's it. No, we are no longer moving towards the European values. So people started the protest. And the protest was really small, but eventually, because government decided to apply force, it grew up to massive sizes, because they sent police to beat up students, which was absolutely unfair because they didn't do anything. They were just standing in the tents. They didn't break any laws. They were protesting. They were a small group. And the government decided to apply force, the brutal force, and that's why all the protests happened. So basically, this is what relates me a little bit to the protest in Ukraine, is that I left Ukraine and they decided to fight for it.
I think every Ukrainian person who are either inside Ukraine and outside of Ukraine thought that it was imminent, that another revolution, maybe not in the same format of the Orange Revolution of 2004, would take place when Mr. Yanukovych was elected as the president of Ukraine in 2009, I think it was. So it took only 3 years for that critical point to be reached. People lost their patience with the terror that he brought around. At so many different levels. And having relatives back home, you were always getting feedback on how they felt about it. Because you could analyze things in your own way as well by watching news channels and when the government did a U-turn on the EU association agreement, something that Ukraine had long aspired for. And that was seen by the Ukrainians as a window of hope, maybe, to try and become a modern, transparent, democratic society. And once the Ukrainian government withdrew from that agreement, it enraged a lot. It enraged the Ukrainian public a good bit. But I think the main reason for Maidan was just the overall level of tiredness from institutionalized corruption, and it's funny how people, ordinary people, some in Ireland, people would say that Ireland is a corrupt state, but it's very subtle, and that you won't really know about it and hear about it, but it is happening. It is taking place. Whereas in Ukraine, it wasn't the case. I mean, it happened in your everyday life.
I decided to came here a couple of years ago to prepare my papers because I had high hopes for Ukraine and the future situation in the country. The country was preparing for the signing of the association agreement with the European Union, and that there was a huge need for managerial skills, and that was my bet for the future. But the situation turned quite drastically since then. The Maidan Revolution was a big part of it. I was actually part of it, yeah, in a way, yes. My workplace is situated just by Maidan on Khreshchatyk Street. It's several minutes walk to Maidan. And when the protest started, naturally, everybody wanted to help it, including my colleagues. A lot of companies in the central Kiev would provide paid vacations for their staff to support the movement, because it was really hard for people to see all these things on TV and not to get involved. Now I see quite a lot of similarities between Ukraine and Ireland in a way, from the historical perspective, both peripheral countries, and really complicated history with the imperial states, in the Irish case this is the UK, in the Ukrainian case this is Russian Empire. And I traveled to Ireland on several occasions before, so I found out that this wonderful country and that education is actually very good here. So I decided to come during the protests. I was passing my exams and English tests. It was quite tough, but yeah, I guess I did not that bad because I'm here. But I think it actually helped me. It actually helped me to understand myself better, to understand people better, and to get into like this kind of motivational stream, to get more motivation. There was a huge energy in Maidan. I was sitting in my office at the moment, and it's really close to Maidan, and my colleagues and I heard like several shots. We didn't really understand like what was going on, because like Kyiv is really peaceful city. You wouldn't hear a lot of shots or troubles there. So like we were really alert. We heard about the protests on TV, but we thought like they were kind of minor protests, and nothing's really like massive happening. Like a bunch of students went to the streets and that's it. But then it turned out that the police would beat them severely after the agreement was rejected by former President Yanukovych, who was eventually pushed out of the country, and is now a guest of President Putin, although he's being sought by Interpol. But yeah, that's not the thing. Everybody like tried to learn as much as we could about this thing. Obviously, like even the news, like they weren't on the same page, because there's always a delay before you receive an information. But word of mouth is actually very powerful. We would talk to people like from our office, and there would be somebody who knows somebody who participated in the protest. And so this is the way we got information initially. And then the protest got this scale quite quickly, actually, because the initial protests happened in the end of November, and in December already was massive. So we heard that there's a huge need for medicines. We heard that there's a huge need for fortifications, that working hands are needed there. And our employer was really helpful with that. Like they were really understanding that, although we had really challenging projects, and those are international projects, and well, of course, international stakeholders wouldn't understand it as well as our leadership did, but yeah, they were really flexible. I'm very grateful for them. So like we just went out there first and tried to explore the place, what was going on really. Like on the TV, it looked like kind of surreal, you know, a lot of fumes, a lot of like disorder, things like that. But what we found out, it was actually really well organized. On the outskirts of this zone of protests, there were barricades already constructed by people. There were organized civic groups, like medical groups, and some food was organized, also delivered to people inside there. And but there's still like everybody was needed. Like you needed to do something. Everybody needs something. Like people needed masks because they were fired at with poisonous gases, and people needed medicines because like they didn't have enough, because so many people were wounded at the time and poisoned, and just so many things were happening at the same time. We didn't even realize the whole thing, but we realized that there is a need to help people, and those people were regular folks, like you would meet in the street. They were just fed up with everything. We went there, talked to them, asked what they needed, helped with their labor to build the barricades, to deliver medicines, to bring the tires. Tires were used to be set on fire to protect the area of the protest from the riot police. And eventually, like more and more people would come there, and more formal groups would organize and do all these amazing things. Like the whole infrastructure actually evolved there. So it was quite fascinating.